Inherited will, the swelling of the changing times, the dreams of the people. These things can never be stopped as long as people seek the answers to freedom. These things will never die. Inherited will, the swelling of the changing times, the dreams of the people. These things can never be stopped. So as long as people seek the answers to freedom, these things will never die. Now, this is not exactly how it's said in One Piece, but you get the gist of it. I figured I'd switch it up with some Emperor Palpatine. But um, I did both. I wanted to give you some Sith and some Jedi, just to go yin and yang. Okay, I wanted to give some One Piece yin and yang. But I made some comments in previous videos that are true, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste to see where I get some of my information from. Okay, and how One Piece is actually related to these things and is actually borrowing from them. But it's so easy for us to suspend reality and put our minds in that zone. However, imagine how much a person can control you if they can limit your perspective. And like I said, there are many people out there with great content. Some of them are in box thinking, though, whether it be Alex Jones or Billy Carson. For example, Billy Carson goes through Emerald Tablet text about Thoth, the Atlantean, son of Atlantis, but also has a negative perspective about other beings, but a positive perspective only about Thoth, as though those people in these texts are in a box themselves that can never evolve, never change. They never have a new idea. But when you actually get into the text, they do have new ideas. They do have changes, just like we do, as above, so below. They're not just on some piece of paper and can never have a change, and there's not differing of opinions, you know? So in this video, I would like to delve into that a little bit, but I want to focus on a overview of text. So I'm using multiple sources that, in my understanding, are connected exactly. Okay. But also, I don't want to just focus on a Mesopotamian, African, or Western society perspective on these things. I also want to address yin and yang um, in the culture that still looks at those polarities. Like I talked about the law of one, negative energies, positive energies, how together they are connected. Look at the symbol of the yin and yang. Okay, it's the principles of the yin and yang in light of their five elements. But when you go to Greece, they prefer four elements, which affects the writings that they have and knowledgeable text that are meant to pass down information to the reader. So when you look at the yin and yang, yang is considered to be more masculine. I did the video on personality types and how we can put them in box thinking and understand them. But when you look at yang, it's considered a darker energy, a masculine energy. It looks like a cell, a black cell with a dot inside of it. When you look at yin, it's considered yin, Y-I-N. It's considered to be more of a feminine energy with a black dot inside of it. So as you see, in one there's all, and all there's one, and we're all connected. That symbol shows you that. For example, light can be used for positive, but also be used for negative. Darkness can be used for positive, but also for negative. For example, we talked about in the law of one, unity, light in particular. When light is split into different prisms of its energy, we perceive it as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, or Roy G. Biv, which is the acronym. Okay? But together, light gives us that ability to make a discernment between the colors, which in essence creates division that can lead to conflict. And when a person has light, sometimes they're blinded by that spectrum, thinking that this is all that there is, being blind to all the things behind the light. And knowledge and wisdom are light, according to the text, according to knowledge. Knowledge and wisdom are light. So don't put your light under a lampshade, in essence. However, the negative part of the light is, and we have great philosophers and teachers, politicians, great people in time, in which the Gorosei are actually meant to be positive people in history. Okay? The Grateful Dead, Saint J. Garcia Saturn, these are positive people that tried to bring about freedom in the world. So how is it they're all negative in One Piece? Yin and Yang and the five elements, the five Gorosei. Okay, this is foreshadowing, and I'm willing to go and talk more about it, but for time's sake, I'm going to sum it up as the 5 days of the week, okay, or the five Gorosei. But there's a seven, even in the Revelations and even in the writings of Thoth, okay, Thoth the Atlantean, the Emerald Tablets, they talk about seven voices, and they name them in the Thoth, but in Revelations they just say seven thunders. They don't name them in Revelations in the New Testament. However, when you go to Sunday, you get sun worship. Sunday was not the original Sabbath day until the Christians changed it through the Romans. Okay, but then you had Monday, which actually referred to the moon day, the reflected light, and you get the mythology of the moon princess who wants to be saved, came down to earth, tested a bunch of people, but in essence went back to her isolation castle. I learned about that probably about 20 years ago now. However, 20 years ago? I'd say 15 years ago. However, the sun and moon, the sun, like I said, can blind us to all the heavenly glories behind it. The darkness is normally, in most people's mind, considered to be ignorance or dark or blindness. But there's a positive to being blind. There's a positive to cutting off the world or being dead to the world. For example, in the darkness, you get to see the moon and all the other stars that are further along. You're not cursed to have to do this, to discriminate by recognizing different colors. So that's a little bit of understanding and some of the wisdom of the dark sun cult, or the worshippers of the dark sun, and those who worship the sun, or those of the Illuminati who seek to give light, to be the light unto the world, versus those who seek to keep the people in darkness in order to meet their needs, whether it be suppressing the people or really protecting them in a way so that they don't get exposed to something more than they can handle. So that's a little bit about that so far. And what I did also want to say, some people say knowledge is power, okay? But with great power comes a great responsibility. If you're responsible, sure that is. But some people seek to use their power to hurt people. Therefore, there is no true responsibility. You can do as thou wilt. And that's part of the mystery of the dark sun cult, or the lovers of love. The people who follow the laws of love versus those who follow the laws of light, versus those who understand both and will them at their will, who wield something called the law of one. So when you actually go into text, we're seeing elements of this. Well, like I said in other videos, 10 Commandments, for example, would be very good rules to build a strong empire, but that's towards a distortion towards power for your group. This is very interesting because in the Bible, they have numerology, if you will. I talked in the past about Ophiuchus being the illuminated. So an example, Paul would be the illuminated one of the Pharisees, who was in opposition to Jesus and not his disciple like some people believe. And then you have Jesus, who will be the illuminated one amongst his apostles, who would illuminate them, hit them with the everlasting light of that wisdom of that particular tree, if you will. So when you go to Asian culture, when you study the principles yin and yang and the five elements, you end up with wood, fire, earth, water, and metal. But that metal, in its more pure state, is gold, which is synonymous with the sun, rejuvenation. Okay, gold, even in ancient texts of the Atlanteans or in other texts in Genesis, where Egypt, they said that gold was good there. It was used to extend people's life. So that's what gold was used for. Gold could be used as a energetic source to create certain types of waves where we can balance organic material out in a rejuvenation chamber. And that's what the pyramids were in essence for. So that encompassed all the powers that they said Jesus gave to his disciples to dispel venom from serpents, to cast out, the power over scorpions, over serpents, the ability to do this and that. Those were to balance out one's mind, body, spirit complex, if you want. So I'm not sure if I should go forward, but I would like to say one or two more things, okay? Because we know that the Gorosei in One Piece are all named after planets. However, the kanji in Japan actually, just like in China, the Gorosei actually have kanjis linked to elements. So too, and when you go to Rome, okay, which get their pantheon from Greece, who get their pantheon from Egypt, okay, you end up with, like they say in the Old Testament, the beginning of knowledge, the fear of God is the beginning of knowledge. I said this in previous videos. But fools hate wisdom and instruction. So fear is also referring to the four elements: fire, earth, air, water. And that's Old Testament. I mean, that's actually Proverbs. But it also takes us all the way to Revelations, where we end up dealing with the four angels on the four corners of the world who had the power to stop wind from blowing on the earth and on the sea. Okay? That's encompassing those elements. And now you're dealing with, in One Piece, four blues. So you have Luffy from the east, blue, there you go. And you jump further down in Revelations, they're talking about, and I saw another angel ascending in the east. Or, in other renditions, and I saw another angel ascending with the sunrise, having the seal of the living God, who cried out with a loud voice to the four angels not to harm the earth and to not harm the sea. That will be the Gorosei. Take it or leave it. These things, One Piece has encoded in it someone who knows these things is making these connections. But unless we get enough knowledge to rise from the ignorance or darkness of whatever we've been taught through religion, through social media programming, just through the lack of just being exposed to it, some people spend a lot of their life learning things, and they buy into they buy into whatever they were taught into such a way they get put in a box, and now they're in a compartment or intellectual ghetto where they have trouble rejecting it or even challenging it because they've found rationalizations around it, whether it be logical or illogical or erroneous. So what I'm saying is, when you look at the theological seminary, or you look at particular sects or even groups in Islam, they're a lot of times they're focused on ancillary things that give them power, and because it gives them power, are there people that have made them into that image and likeness of them. It's hard to challenge it. In fact, most people never try, and that's an interesting concept. Imagine this, okay? During the Dark Ages, during the Dark Ages in Europe, most people couldn't read. So the Catholic Church, which was the predecessor to the other churches, because the reason why I can say that is because they're using the book that was created uh, by Rome, basically. Okay, and then changed. Um, um, then changed in the 17th century. Okay, by King James. That's why people most read the King James Version. It's something that happened in the 17th century, 1600s. So what I'm going to talk about today is one of the earlier texts of the so-called Christians or people that follow Jesus Christ slash Yeshua HaMashiach. But this person truly didn't have a name, just like Thoth had many names. He was of the alignment of this. Therefore, he is not limited to an actual name and don't have a name that we can truly speak. At a certain level, we can't even acknowledge that name. So, the theological seminary, um, we they would have us believe that we only live one life and have an afterlife that is eternal. Can you imagine the manipulation that can occur if someone can get you to believe that you only have one mistake, one life, and if you choose the wrong thing, you are going to go to torment forever? Forever. Okay? Can you imagine how your perspective is operating not with true love, but actually a fear mechanism at that point? But if you could say, okay, my energy is eternal. However, if I make a mistake now, just like the scripture says, my sin, okay, or my straying from the yellow brick road, if you will, or the red line, my straying away from it will, in essence, bring about karma on me, okay, epigenetically, spiritually, actively, that will be not only visited upon me in my next incarnation, but also on my children. It's inertia. It's a force that is gaining. Okay, so inherited will. Okay, the dreams of the people. These things cannot be stopped unless, okay, unless we have a conscious shift. We stop the will of karma through forgiveness. However, if a people do not seek freedom, like it says in the beginning, so as long as people seek the answers to freedom, this will never pass away or die. However, the goal, as I said in the law of one, for negative entities who come to us, just like St. J. Garcia called the Marines and other people around them insects, if we are lowered from a human state into an animal state, a chattel state, where we're no longer conscious, no longer see the world around us, then in essence, they have taken something from us, our will. And then those people are easy to enslave at that point because they're not at the level of a man, they're at the level of an animal. Animals function differently than humanity, if you will. I'm not going to get into that today, okay? It's not that we're better than animals, okay? We've taken that trajectory. It's almost like, why is the soap bubble round? It's the most efficient form for the soap bubble to have, energetically speaking. So this is why we're human with the test of having 5 fingers. No other group of beings on this planet have posable thumbs. So it's a test, an adaptation that would would be a physical adaptation that would force a spiritual evolution. So as above, so below. You know, the physical affects the spiritual, the spiritual affects the spiritual affects the physical and the mind. The physical affects the mind and spiritual, okay? And the mind affects the spiritual and physical. So it's all interconnected web, you know. So I think we're gonna very closely. We're about to get into this thing, and I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna stop it. I'm gonna explain it and how it links up to One Piece thus far, up to chapter 1097. Okay.
Judgment and retribution. And they said, Amen. The third act concerning the servant.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Act 3, and a text from the 1st or 2nd century. It's called the Acts of the Apostle Judas Didymus Thomas. Not the Acts in the New Testament, okay? Not the Acts of the New Testament. This is very old text. Many scholars would call this a pseudo-picritical writing. Not that it's not true. It's that the religion could not put this in their text without destroying everything about the religion. Not that it opposes it, but the narrow perspective that they have them in terms of a box where they make a person think that you have to tithe, or you know or that if you follow some other religion, one is right, one is wrong. What if they're all right? What if we read them in the proper light to seek the truth, okay, and the right answers, and then we see the connection, we see the one piece. Not just religions, but also spiritual teachings and beliefs and peoples. Here we go.
And the apostle went forth to go where the Lord had bidden him. And when he was near to the second milestone, and had turned a little out of the way, he saw the body of a comely youth lying, and said, Lord, is it for this that thou hast brought me forth, to come hither, that I might see this temptation? Thy will therefore be done as thou desirest. And he began to pray and to say, O Lord, the judge of quick and dead, of the quick that stand by, and the dead that lie here.
Okay, you got three things here. I'm probably going to touch on two of them, okay? The will of D. I'm starting to think it's like the will of the divine. But when I talk about quick and dead, I mentioned in previous videos, go to my um, One Piece in the Light of the Law of One, video 1 and video 2, okay? For example, there's a lesser mystery and there's a greater mystery. There are people that are just happy to be part of a culture and in essence become fuel for that culture to continue, or a foundation in which people can experience that culture and either stay at that level, either dead level, where they're just going to go on that plane. They said the meek shall inherit the earth, okay? But then there's people that jump off from there, that seek to take the knowledge, what is good, and elevate themselves. Elevate themselves positively or negatively. That's the thing. Because as a person is negative, as I mentioned in other videos, you can go deeper into the darkness of negativity and become more powerful in that power and become a priest, as the Bible says, the so-called inner mysteries of Satan. But then you can also rise positively, be a so-called elect of Christ or the Savior. Okay, so this is what we're actually looking at and dealing with. That sounds interesting, right? So you have a lesser mystery, which are known as the dead, but you also have those who are elevating through the levels, and in the aspects of time, it's very quick. So they're known as the quick. You ever see that movie Immortals, The Quickening? where they would take another person's head off or whatever, and then they would get like a boost in power. That's interesting, but that's what we're looking at right there. The quick and the dead. Someone who can judge the souls of the quick and the dead. Interestingly enough, the people in One Piece with the Will of D, they all died with a smile. And we also found out there's actually baptism in One Piece. They call it drinking the sake. And there's multiple examples of this, okay? Being sake. What about being sake? What about Sabo becoming a D through Ace and Luffy? Hmm? Yeah. What about Jaguar D Saul? What about Gold D Roger? There's that word gold again, and one of the five elements in Europe. I'm not Europe, in Asia. Gold, the sun. Gold D, the Will of D, Roger. He shared drinks and partied with Whitebeard and told him about the One Piece. So when Whitebeard died, he died with a smile on his face. Now it's not that the Gorosei are necessarily against Joy Boy. It's that they work together, and that's why the world government was always trying to pursue the Gum Gum fruit or the Sun God Nika fruit, but there's a will in the world, and there are periods in time where things will come out that were not known. Okay, and there's times in history where things remain dormant and nobody will know about them, or people will discover them, and then there's a jump off point. That's where we are right now in One Piece and really in the world. So that's what we get so far.
And Master and Father of all things, and Father not only of the souls that are in bodies, but of them that have gone forth of them. For of the souls also that are in pollutions, thou art Lord and Judge. Come thou at this hour wherein I call upon thee, and show forth thy glory upon him that lieth here.
Well, that's interesting. So the will of D and the voice of all things. What was the voice of all things? You know, Roger heard a voice and he said, "Who are you?" You know, and then he was so confident that he wouldn't die. So here we get it. You know, the mysteries of Thoth, the Atlantean, but the Greeks had different names for him. They called him Hermes Trismegistus. And that's why I said we have a mind, body, spirit complex. Okay, Hermes and the writings of Hermes went around to different groups of peoples on this planet. Okay, different names, Kukulkan, other places. All right, Veracocha. There's a lot of them doing the same thing. But the way the world will work, they'll try to tell you all this is try to diminish our particular mafia group or denomination, or to diminish whatever we put out there. See, that's the power elite. That's people who are afraid. Those are people that have their feet to the fire. If you look at our medical, our medicine today, doctors, they were taught to prescribe medicine. Therefore, the solution to your problem is going to be prescribing pharmacia, medicine, sorcery, not to actually get rid of the element. If you go to a psychologist and you have a problem, because they're in their box, they're going to try to solve your problem using psychiatric methods or psychology methods or psychosocial methods, right? If you go to a physician for an ailment, he's going to try to solve with his because we've been put in boxes. It's time to decompartmentalize not just information in the information war. We need to decompartmentalize our minds. We need to be able to have jacks of all trades now as we're rebuilding this system back up to make the world better again. Okay? So, what else is there?
And he turned himself unto them that followed him, and said, This thing is not come to pass without cause, but the enemy hath effected it, and brought it about, that he may assault us thereby. And see ye that he hath not made use of another sort, nor wrought through any other creature, save that which is his subject. And when he had so said, a great serpent came out of a hole, beating with his head and shaking his tail upon the ground, and with a loud voice said unto the apostle, I will tell before thee the cause wherefore I slew this man, since thou art come hither for that end, to reprove my works. And the apostle said, Yea, say on.
Okay. So now we're seeing it right now, okay? A serpent comes out of the ground. A serpent, a shape shifting serpent. So in One Piece, we're dealing with celestial dragons above the red line. And when Sabo, in order to make war with these people, saw the transfigured shape shifting nature of the celestial dragons who became the Gorosei. And I told you in other videos, Emu and other parts of the world, Rakshasas were shape shifting serpent people, which gives rise to their own philosophies. And if you want to know their philosophies, you have to understand the law of one, but also understand in more detail the laws of love and light. The orders of these are like progressions to a connection of a wire. For example, alternating current, right? But you have a ground wire. If you look at DNA, Yes, we use more of DNA than we say, but DNA, when you look at the RNA aspects of it, okay, you have a ground wire there, okay? You have adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. Those work together with a grounding wire, a grounding wiring where one protein we think does nothing, but now we know it's grounding. Okay? So when you look at the serpents here, the celestial dragons, to learn about their doctrine, that for the most part, their kingship or their priesthood is to bring about negativity in the universe. In this case, One Piece. And the devils would be like their higher level kings on the thrones, if you will. And they are opposed by the D's. Like I said earlier, I look at the D's now as actually divine, cosmic divine energies that will come back and naturally bring about a dissolution of their ways, like it says right here. So he says, "Hey, this is my reason for doing it. I know you come to undo my works, like the Bible says. Christ comes to do the works of the evil one." So when you look at Paul, his doctrine being the laws of love through the celestial dragons, giving into one's passions, and they say in the Quran actually, the passions of Shaitan, giving into them, the whole of the law is love. So in other words, if you love something, you could do whatever you want. Like Paul says in the book of Romans, brothers and sisters, consider the law. If a woman takes on a new husband while her husband's alive, she's adulterous. However, if her husband dies, she is free to marry as she wills. Therefore, let us be free of the law. The law, so let us be free of the law. It gave rise to us to be sinners in our bodies. For the Lord God, or Jesus in that sense, is spiritual, but I am of the cardinal flesh, therefore making me the man of sin. So let us be dead to the law. Let us be dead and take on a new Messiah, one risen from the grave. And we're not going to get here in this, but actually in this is exact Act 3. Oh no. Actually in later, I think it's around Act 10 in this. When Thomas goes to India, he dealt with a king who didn't want to believe him while he was alive. But when he was resurrected, he then said, "Oh, so you wouldn't believe me when I was alive, but you believe me now that I've died." So those people love the death. So when Jesus says, "I am opposed by those who love the death, but I come to bring about life, life more abundantly. Don't let any man deceive you. I have not come to destroy the law." They're talking about the Mosaic law. "In fact, I've come to complete it. For not one jot nor one tittle will pass away from the law until his purpose is set." And it goes further. So, in other words, whoever falls on this foundation that I represent, this priesthood, intergalactic priesthood, if you will, you call it the law, or you can call it the will of D. Anyone who falls on this foundation shall be broken, but anyone this foundation falls upon will be ground into dust. Whoa, what a powerful statement. As above, so below, and in the cycles that we're dealing with. When you break down the orders of Paul in particular, look at the name. Paul has two names. He's actually Saul, Paul and Saul. Okay? So when you look at those names, Paul and Saul, it means a little wish or a little prayer to be desired. Therefore, when you look at the symbol of that church that he created, the Roman Catholic Church, instead of a capital T like the Egyptians with the sun over it, which is the priesthood symbol then, now you get a lowercase t. So you get deposition, where you have the noble gases, like I said, Israel, I, Ra, L, I, Ra, noble, L in human form, like I, consciousness of the universe, noble like the sun god, and El, Elohim in human form. But when you go to Gentiles, in the language that Paul's father was, he was a Roman, but also half Egyptian through his mother. But you kind of pick up your mother's mind, but physically you pick up the attributes of your father, which is known, but also mentioned in Paul, even in Romans, saying that, look, I, I don't, I understand the law of my mind or spiritually what my mother has for me, but my body's not subdued by that. I follow my father. Therefore, I'm not subdued by the laws of the universe. I want to follow the darkness. I want to do all types of stuff. Therefore, um, when you look at the coding of it in the text, Gentile from right to left, because they inverted the yin and yang, the elements, you get an L that is negative or lowered in density, but also lowered in a conscious negative. Okay, so they're inverted in that sense. And when you look at Jesus and his 12 apostles, you get the inversion. You get a very high level teaching, but also the law of one, not just the Mosaic law. He came to bring the law of light into the law of one. Because, like in the law of one says, those who possess the laws of love seek the law of light. Those who possess the laws of light seek the law of one. But then they go further. Those who possess the law of one seek the law of foreverness. And then they said, we don't know what's beyond infinity. So we have infinity all around us. When you see animals and you see things that we can perceive, we consider that intelligent infinity. NASA, the SETI, the search for intelligent life in the universe, would say we're looking for intelligent life. No, there's all types of life out in outer space. We just want to focus on a narrow bandwidth of beings that look like us and build things like us. Okay? So that's the intellectual ghetto that we're looking for right there. We're looking for life in outer space, and we've been finding it all the time. We just don't recognize it because we're in our little box. NASA wants to find another human being. They're not really looking for life in the universe. Oh, and SETI, just for the example, was a lion-headed god out of Egypt. So they have these things coded all around us all the time, you know. And being the 13, Paul, over his Pharisee group, would be the 13th, being Ophiuchus, or a man who snaps the serpent or reality in half and enters into the dimension. Same thing with Christ, but in the positive light, the positive. And that's why when you look at the so-called kiss of death from Judas to Jesus, when a scorpion stings you, it leaves a kiss mark. But Christ said, look, I give you power over scorpion stings and serpents. But that's what that is. And when you look for it in the sky, Ophiuchus has shifted due to our perspective from Scorpio to Sagittarius. Okay? So when John the Baptist, who baptized Christ, is in the wilderness baptizing with water, Christ comes to him and he says, hey, I need to be baptized. And John the Baptist said, no, I want to be baptized by you. And Jesus praised him and says, John the Baptist is the greatest man to ever come from the womb of a woman. In other words, he makes a distinction between himself and him. Not that he's greater. Their origins are different in particular. So when John the Baptist was approached by the Pharisees, he said, oh my, there's a pit of vipers. The Pharisees, the Sadducees. A pit of vipers refers to serpents. And because they were looking to defect, as you'll see later in this text, okay, just like Saint Nosgard, okay, of the Don Quixote family, was looking to actually defect his family. The Don Quixote family looked to defect from the wicked ways of the celestial dragons and live amongst the people. Okay, take it or leave it. But then they said there's a checkered past of the will of D also. So you have a mixing of the seeds, if you will. And that's why Christ says, I only came to one group right now to gather them back up to myself, my own people. But later you're going to see in this text how the serpent seeks to gain his back that have defected. And that's also mentioned in the book of Matthew when they say, many will come from far and wide to sit down at the table and break bread with Abraham, known as the father of many nations. But they will come from far and wide, not just from on earth, but from all throughout the universe or the multiverse. As I said in other uh, videos, when we talk about how we have space travel and other species in One Piece, but also we have intergalactic migration or soul migration on this planet. Okay, where you have a natural trajectory to lean a certain type of way, but also the conscious choice to say, well, I'm not going to do that. I think I oppose that.
And the serpent. There is a certain beautiful woman in this village over against us, and as she passed by me, I saw her and was enamored of her, and I followed her and kept watch upon her. And I found this youth kissing her, and he had intercourse with her, and did other shameful acts with her. And for me it was easy to declare them before thee, for I know that thou art the twin brother of the Christ, and always abolisheth our nature. But because I would not affright her, I slew him not at that time, but waited for him till he passed by in the evening, and smote and slew him, and especially because he had ventured to do this upon the Lord's day. And the apostle inquired of him, saying, Tell me of what seed and of what race thou art. And he said unto him, I am a reptile of the reptile nature, and noxious son of the noxious father, of him that hurt and smote the four brethren which stood upright. In Syriac it says the elements or four cardinal points may be meant.
There you go. Okay. I talked about the four winds. I talked about the elements. Okay. So, just like I said, when I was critical of Billy Carson taking a fixed perspective on particular groups, we have look at the diversity we have around us right now in our own families and even our own minds and our own lives, how we change. Okay, imagine that. Imagine that we're the only people that can change. We're almost looking, and when we take that perspective, we kind of lower other people to animals, and we say animals don't change. But we know animals do change over time. You know, we have the observer effect, institutionally known as the Hawthorne effect. But in physics and science, we know that when we stare at particles, we change them literally. So we have the observer effect that affects the reality around us. Then you also have the 100th monkey effect, where animals have been proven to learn from different continents, and accelerated rates when they're exposed to experimentation. So here you have, they say, hey, who are you? I'm 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 God of War, Science Defense, say Jay Garcia Saturn. No, but in this thing he says, look, I'm a reptilian of the reptilian nature. I am the son, okay? Son of Noxious, okay? Of the father of Noxious. Son of the father of Noxious. So a reptilian of the reptilian nature. Noxious son of the father of Noxious. So there you go. These guys have bona fides or codes of arms or ways of identifying who they are and what they've done. Just like I I have relatives or whatever, and especially in certain tribes, they will have names like, let's say, Tree Sitting Bear Waddles or something like that, or Tree Sitting Bear, or Crazy Coyote, you know, depicting something about them. And it's the same thing in the scripture. Even the apostles had nicknames. Um, so that's kind of what we're looking at right there. Like, look, man, I'm a real person, and this is what I've done. Okay. And I know that you are here to do away with my world. So when you look at the yokai in One Piece, you're kind of getting to this level here, where these beings have the ability to affect spiritual beings. known as the four angels or the four winds. So they were, before they had a physical form, they had an etherical form, which is also something passed down even in mythology. When you go into the Atlanteans, you go into the stories of like Osiris came down as a green ethereal being, but his half brother Set, who later became Satan, came down with the red hue spiritually. And when you look at it in the Quran, they said the angels are brighter than our sun. They give off a certain type of hue, but we can't see them with our naked eye. But the jinn, which were the counterparts to them, because they were given dominion over the physical realm, being able to reproduce. Therefore, there's a difference where Joy Boy or Christ in this sense is king of heaven and eventually earth. But the Goros say, like I said, are quarantined, probably through the red line function, not to be able to leave the planet. Because when you really look at it, we have a we have abodes with boundaries. We have an ozone layer known as the Van Allen belt, but it's also known as the dragon sheath. There you go. The dragon sheath exists to keep the dragons from escaping. So when you look at it, different experiments that were done where the United States shot nukes into the sky to try to create a hole in our ozone layer, and how they got lucky, allegedly, and went to outer space to the moon and couldn't leave for another 20 years. Does that sound right to you? There's more things going on than meet the eye. These guys are quarantined, but they are given dominion to do whatever they want to do. So the celestial dragons, being of their nature, have the ability to do whatever they want to do to the nobles. They can kidnap Shirahoshi, being a fishman princess. They can go down and wipe out people in God Valley or in different places for sport. This is what's going on in One Piece. This is what you're reading right here. This is where you're seeing these things come from.
I am son to him that sitteth on a throne over all the earth, that
Emu.
receiveth
Sorry.
back his own from them that borrow. I am son to him that girdeth about the sphere. I am kin to him that is outside the ocean, whose tail is set in his own mouth. I am he that entered through the barrier into paradise, and spake with Eve the things which my father bade me speak unto her.
Boom. See? And this may be where, and there's other points, okay? There's other mythology about the sea, you know. But he just said, look, I'm the kin of those that exist outside the sea or the oceans. But the thing about it, ocean doesn't pop up in the gospel because they were known as seas. Okay, so in One Piece you have the four blues. You have Sun God Nika as Luffy out of the East Blue, and I quoted the angel ascending in the east. See, there are no, look, there are lucky coincidences, I guess. I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in coincidence. But if you want to, because we're human, we can say, "Oh man, I got that right," and I didn't mean to do it, but because it's synchronically lined up, because I'm following the blueprint, I'm seeing more about the coding of it as I go along. That's what Oda could actually be looking at. He's probably looking at our stuff too. But at the same time, synchronicity, we once you are in touch with reality, people that are in that wavelength can even expose more of the reality to you. So we're all making One Piece, whether we want to admit it or not, or if you even see it or not. And even though Oda says he knows how he wants it to end, that's just like a finish line. It doesn't mean that there's not other ideas. Heck, he's taking advice for cover stories, you know? I'm sure more goes on.
I am he that kindled and inflamed Cain to kill his own brother, and on mine account did thorns and thistles grow up in the earth. I am he that cast down the angels from above, and bound them in lusts after women, that children born of earth might come of them, and I might work my will in them. I am he that hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he should slay the children of Israel, and enslave them with the yoke of cruelty. I am he that caused the multitude to err in the wilderness, when they made the calf. I am he that inflamed Herod, and enkindled Caiaphas unto false accusation of a lie before Pilate. For this was fitting to me. I am he that stirred up Judas, and bribed him to deliver up the Christ. I am he that inhabiteth and holdeth the deep of hell. But the Son of God hath wronged me against my will, and taken them that were his own from me. I am kin to him that is come from the east, unto whom also power is given to do what he will upon the earth.
There you go. He can do whatever he wants on the earth. He comes from the east as a double ganger, okay? They came through the barrier, like I said, like in the law of one. Raw, while the universe is infinite and there's no end to ourselves, so as above, so below. In this solar system, according to the law of one, we have 67 million planets, in which a certain percent of them don't even fit into a density perspective, as we were shown in our example of the densities 1 through 8. There's other ones, there's like a third of them that don't even fit into that category at all. The sun itself is not even of a density, for example. Okay? So he's saying, hey, I mean, I came through the barrier, man. You know, I was doing my thing. I'm giving dominion over the earth. But in the Bible, it says, whoa, how is it that the son of the morning has fallen? How have you been quarantined in the prison planet? You know, how is it? And in the Bible, it says 1/3 of the angels followed, okay? Lucifer, Halal. But you find in the Hindu text, because we're now dealing with the inversion, they say 2/3 of those crystal cities that were in the sky fell and had to be reincarnated. And then look at the shoot down scenarios or UFO chasing things we have, where we're bringing down extraterrestrials allegedly or having conflicts with them. Take it or leave it. Another topic for another day. Okay? Another topic for another day. However, if you look at the fact that he said, look, I'm the one that enticed the watchers and angels. The angels like a generic term for aliens. There's other ones of them. The moon was known as the watch tower. That's what, like in Justice League. Huh? Oh, interesting. Um, However, those watchers came down and mingled amongst the daughters of men and the gods, okay? And there was mixing of things there and contaminating of experiments, if you will, where people had ambitions to keep their experiments in a box, just like people in a experiment want to keep their experiment quarantined without being tampered with. And that's what was going on here. We had high sciences, a scientific technocracy, if you will, that is still the ruling elite to this day on the earth. But we're coming through a cycle now where they say the first and second generations love the Lord because there's an inversion now, but the third and fourth do not. And in previous videos, I said we have 2 sun cycles, 2 moon cycles. When you're in the sun cycle, the moon cycle is recessive or weaker, and the sun rules. When you're in the moon cycle is more powerful, and the sun children are weaker. There's a gestation period. There's cycles to things. Therefore, if you look at it in that light, in that understanding, now we understand why Joy Boy, he came 3 times in One Piece. We don't know nothing about the second time he came. It wasn't the right time. When Jesus was in the 2,000 years ago, when Christ was here, he was being asked because John the Baptist was already in prison to be killed and beheaded. And they asked him, hey, are you the one? Or should we wait for another? Someone risen from the grave. Reincarnation. And he said, go back and tell him. The blind see, the deaf hear, the dumb speak. Tell them that, and tell them the dead have risen. But the one thing that was missing was the fighting. They weren't ready to fight on his behalf. Therefore, it wasn't time. It was 2,000 years too early. So Joy Boy came back, but and then they had the incident on the Red Line where the ancient robots were trying to climb up the beanstalk, try to get to the level where the celestial dragons were ruling the world, but at the same time prisoners. As you really look at the celestial dragons, they are being kept as cattle, but of a higher status of the people on the surface of the earth, where they have dominion over them, but at the same time, they are under the authority of the God's knights. See? Principalities in high places, okay? Rulers of the darkness of this world, but also there's rules of the darkness of other worlds. Ephesians. We're not struggling against flesh and blood. So when you deal with this serpentine being, you can look at him as a yokai. And I said in other videos, yokais do spew poisons, but really curses. And when they break that, they get punished by their master. And you're going to see that. Here we go.
And when that serpent had spoken these things in the hearing of all the people, the apostle by them that have become subject, O shameless one, and be put to confusion, and die wholly. For the end of thy destruction is come, and dare not to tell of what thou hast done by them that have become subject unto thee. And I charge thee in the name that Jesus, who until now contendeth with you for the men that are his own, that thou suck out thy venom which thou hast put into this man, and draw it forth, and take it from him. But the serpent said, Not yet is the end of our time come, as thou hast said. Wherefore compellest thou me to take back that which I have put into this man, and to die before my time? For mine own Father, when he shall draw forth and suck out that which he hath cast into the creation, then shall his end come. And
Okay, guys. I don't know if you caught that, okay? Like I said, the yokai, poisons, curses that they can put into the world. Imagine with Emu, they said we dwell outside the seas, but there are ones of us that are in the sea. So one piece, like I said, I believe the curse of the devil fruits being hindered by sea prison stone and by the sea is going away. Because you see here, Thomas is telling the serpent, take out your poison and you can be purified and you can join us and die holy. Wow. See that? See that? So you have defectors. We have to be ready for defectors coming out with decompartmentalizations, defectors jumping from political parties, Republican, Democrat, Democrat to Republican. We got to be ready for the whistleblowers to come out. We got to be ready for the Marines, admirals, in One Piece to defect. We have to be ready. We got to be ready for the defectors. Maybe Blackbeard joins the world government. Maybe I believe all four of the emperors being elemental in nature, 4 admirals. If you look at it, you can almost say Green Bull is the element of the earth. You could say gravity, though. Where would gravity fit in there? But that would be mass. I guess that could be wind. No, that's not wind. That'd be dragon. But it's interesting. You have light. I'll scratch that one. But it's interesting. Be ready for defectors in One Piece. You just saw the defector here. He said, "Man, you're asking me to suck out the poison, and that will end my life because I'm a yokai. I'm a devil. I'm spiritual. I'm a spiritual being who manifests physically. But if my spirit is broken, I cease to exist on the physical plane with you." But he said, but Judas Didymus Thomas says, If you do this, you die holy, and you'll be able to come and sit down at the table with Abraham, just like I said in the book of Matthew. Take it or let alone. Quran says the same thing. It says there are people that will get to the next density or heaven, even if they don't believe in or practice the religion. The law of one says it's harder when you don't have instructions and knowledge. However, there are people that naturally, innately follow the law of one without any training and make the next density, negative or positive. Here we go.
The apostle said unto him, Show then now the nature of thy father. And the serpent came near and set his mouth upon the wound of the young man, and sucked forth the gall out of it. And by little and little the color of the young man, which was as purple, became white, but the serpent swelled up. And when the serpent had drawn up all the gall unto himself, the young man leapt up and stood, and ran and fell at the apostles' feet. But the serpent, being swelled up, burst and died, and his venom and gall were shed forth. And in the place where his venom was shed, there came a great gulf, and that serpent was swallowed up therein. And the apostles said unto the king and his brother, Take workmen, and fill up that place, and lay foundations, and build houses upon them, that it may be a dwelling place for strangers. But the youth said unto the apostle with many tears, Wherein have I sinned against thee? For thou art a man that hast two forms, and wheresoever thou wilt, there thou art found, and art restrained of no man, as I behold. For I saw that man that stood by thee, and said unto thee, I have many wonders to show forth by thy means, and I have great works to accomplish by thee, for which thou shalt receive a reward, and thou shalt make many to live, and they shall be in rest in light eternal as children of God.
Okay, so did you catch that, guys? So not only was he purified, but he was also made into a inhabitant for aliens. Okay, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Made a foundation for the earth. Oddly enough, in real life, as the new religion was seeking to wipe away history and lower the level of knowledge, which was power of the people, and force them out of knowledge of reading and stuff like that. Many churches in the old world were built over sites where there are ancient megalith like pyramids. Now the inversion is coming back in tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but tomorrow, figuratively speaking. But that's what happened. So in this case, you find out that he's saying, I'm going to build an eternal kingdom where you passed away at. So fill up the hole, make it a foundation, and let it be a dwelling place for strangers. There you go, guys. So let me know what you thought about that. I basically told you what I felt live time, but I laid a foundation which to build upon his perspective that is not dogmatic, but at the same time has connections from the east to the west, worldwide. One piece, getting on the same page. If you like this video and made it to the end, I'd appreciate if you could like, share, and subscribe. Um, I have a lot to talk about. Like I said, I'm trying to leave a little more meat on the bone, but I appreciate the support. I'm very humbled. Like the Wall of One says, when you see, if you seek to elevate, we all have different vibrations. Some of us are indigos, some of us are yellow energy, some of us are orange, some of us are red. But the only way to make it to the higher levels of blue, indigo, and violet, you have to be practicing what you preach and teaching because there's no greater thing in order than to sacrifice yourself in a way that you make the hopeless attempt to teach another, because we can never know when someone will turn the key to intelligent infinity. So if you enjoyed it, stay in gear because there's more coming. Peace.